Rampage to make your SP crave physical intimacy with you. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are not here to talk about tricks, tactics, or chasing another human being for affection. We are here to talk about something far more powerful, the invisible force that creates desire before a single word is spoken, before a single touch is exchanged, before anything physical ever takes place. Because the truth is this: attraction does not begin in the body, it begins in awareness. Most people believe physical closeness is something you must earn, that it comes from timing, effort, or saying the right thing at the right moment. But if that were true, desire would be mechanical. And it is not. Desire is emotional, it is energetic, it is a response to what is felt, not what is forced. What draws one person irresistibly toward another is not need, it is certainty, not longing, but embodiment. And tonight we are going to explore what happens when you stop wanting intimacy and begin expecting it as natural. When you stop hoping someone chooses you and start knowing that closeness with you feels right, easy, and inevitable. You see, every human being moves toward what feels safe, familiar, and emotionally satisfying. People crave where they feel seen, where they feel relaxed, where they feel connected without pressure. And that experience, whether you realize it or not, does not come from your actions. It comes from the state of being you occupy within yourself. When you feel desired, you become desirable. When you feel chosen, you are experienced as magnetic. When you feel comfortable with intimacy, intimacy comes looking for you. This is not fantasy. This is how consciousness expresses itself. Your specific person, your SP, does not respond to words spoken out of anxiety or effort. They respond to the silent assumption you carry about your place in their life. They feel what you believe, not what you say. And when your inner world changes, something remarkable happens. Their behavior shifts without force, their interest deepens without discussion, their desire awakens without explanation. Tonight is about reclaiming your position as the source of attraction, the source of closeness, the source of chemistry. We are here to understand that intimacy is not something you ask for. It is something that follows alignment. It follows the moment you stop trying to be wanted and start living from the feeling of being wanted. As we move forward, I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your imagination. Because what you accept inwardly will always, without exception, find a way to express itself outwardly. And once you understand this, you will never chase desire again. Desire will come to you. Desire is not something you create by doing more. It is not triggered by effort, strategy, or perfectly timed actions. Desire is a state of being, and every action you take merely reflects the state you are already living in. This is where most people misunderstand attraction. They believe if they act loving, seductive, attentive, or available enough, desire will follow. But in reality, desire precedes action. It never follows it. Think about this carefully. When someone genuinely wants you, they don't need convincing. They don't need reminders. They don't need pressure. Their interest moves naturally, effortlessly, almost automatically. That is because desire does not arise from what the other person does. It arises from how that person feels within themselves. Your SP is no different. They are not responding to your words, your messages, or your attempts to get closer. They are responding to the state you are occupying when you think about them. If your inner state is one of wanting, waiting, or hoping, the experience you generate is distance. But if your inner state is one of being desired, chosen, and comfortable with closeness, the experience you generate is attraction. A state is an inner atmosphere. It is the silent assumption you carry about yourself. It is the emotional posture you rest in when no one is watching. And this state speaks far louder than any action ever could. When you feel unsure, you act unsure. When you feel wanted, you act natural. When you feel secure, you become magnetic. And the most important part is this: people do not desire effort, they desire ease. When you are in a state of desire already fulfilled, you are no longer trying to make something happen. You are relaxed, grounded, present. That presence is what your SP feels, not consciously, not logically, but emotionally. This is why chasing kills attraction. Chasing is not an action problem, it is a state problem. Chasing only happens when you believe desire is missing, And when you live in that belief, every move you make confirms lack rather than connection. But the moment you shift into the state of, I am naturally desired, something changes. Your tone changes, your energy changes, your expectations change. You stop watching for signs and start assuming alignment. And that assumption reorganizes how your SP experiences you. You must understand this deeply. Your SP is always responding to who you are being, not what you are doing. If you are being the one who is wanted, intimacy feels normal. If you are being the one who is chosen, closeness feels safe. If you are being the one who is desired, attraction feels inevitable. The state always comes first. This is why imagination is so powerful, not because it forces reality, but because it trains you into a new state. When you imagine being desired, appreciated, and physically comfortable with your SP, you are not asking the future to change. You are changing now. And when the present changes, the future rearranges itself automatically. You don't imagine to get, you imagine to become. And once you become the version of yourself who is relaxed in intimacy, who expects closeness, who feels naturally appealing, your actions take care of themselves. You speak differently without trying. You move differently without effort. You interact without tension. And that is where desire thrives. Desire does not like pressure. Desire does not like need. Desire does not like waiting energy. Desire responds to certainty. When you assume that your presence is welcome, your SP feels safe leaning in. When you assume closeness is natural, they stop resisting it. When you assume intimacy flows easily between you, they begin to experience it that way. This is not manipulation, this is alignment. Every human being is drawn toward what feels emotionally familiar. If you feel familiar with being desired, others will experience you as desirable. If you feel familiar with intimacy, intimacy will feel comfortable with you. If you feel familiar with closeness, closeness will seek you out. But you cannot fake a state. You must enter it. That is why affirmations work only when they shift feeling. That is why visualization works only when it creates emotional acceptance. You are not repeating words to convince the universe. You are relaxing into a version of yourself where desire already exists. And from that place, action becomes irrelevant. You don't need to plan what to say. You don't need to force moments. You don't need to initiate from insecurity. You simply respond from presence. And presence is irresistible. Once you understand that desire is a state, not an action, you stop exhausting yourself. You stop managing outcomes. You stop monitoring behavior. You stop asking, what should I do next? Instead, you ask a better question, who am I being right now? Because when you become the one who is desired, attraction doesn't need effort. It expresses itself naturally. Feeling desired is not a reaction to someone else's behavior. It is a decision you make within yourself. And this is where attraction either comes alive or completely shuts down. Because no one can truly desire you more than you are willing to feel desired yourself. Most people wait. They wait for attention. They wait for validation. They wait for proof. And in that waiting, they unknowingly occupy the state of not being desired. That inner posture speaks loudly. It creates tension. It creates overthinking. It creates effort. And effort is the fastest way to drain desire out of any connection. Here is the truth most people never hear. Desire mirrors self perception. When you feel desired, you naturally express confidence without arrogance. You relax without withdrawing. You become warm without trying. And that emotional ease is what awakens desire in another person. Your SP does not create desire for you. You invite it by how you see yourself. If you internally ask, do they want me? You send uncertainty. If you internally know, of course they want me, you send safety. And people always move toward what feels safe. Feeling desired is not fantasy, it is not pretending, it is an inner acceptance that you are wanted, appealing, and welcome. Once you accept that internally, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This is why affirmations fail when they are spoken from desperation. Saying I am desired while feeling unwanted only strengthens the feeling of lack. But when you say it slowly, calmly, and allow your body to relax into it, something changes. The nervous system softens, the mind stops searching, and that calm certainty becomes attractive. Desire responds to emotional clarity. When you feel desired, you stop scanning for signals. You stop interpreting texts. You stop measuring interest. You stop reading into silence. And that absence of tension is powerful. It removes resistance from the connection. Your SP begins to feel more open around you, not because you demanded closeness, but because you are no longer silently asking for it. Let this sink in. People desire those who are not questioning their own worth. When you feel desired, you naturally give space without fear. You allow moments to unfold. You trust the connection, and trust is deeply magnetic. Feeling desired also shifts how you imagine. Instead of imagining your SP choosing you, you imagine being chosen as normal. Instead of hoping for intimacy, you imagine intimacy as comfortable and expected. That shift removes longing and replaces it with familiarity. And familiarity is the soil where desire grows. Your SP does not need intensity from you. They need emotional permission, permission to feel close, permission to want you without pressure, permission to desire you without obligation. And that permission comes from your inner state. If you feel desired, you don't cling. If you feel desired, you don't rush. If you feel desired, you don't fear silence. You allow desire to breathe. This is why the feeling is everything. The moment you genuinely accept, I am desired by them, your behavior aligns automatically, your voice softens, your reactions slow down, your presence deepens, and your SP feels that difference instantly, even if they can't explain it. You are not sending thoughts to their mind. You are sending signals to the emotional field of the connection. And emotion always speaks first. Another crucial truth. You cannot feel desired and needy at the same time. Needing is rooted in lack. Feeling desired is rooted in fullness. When you feel full, you invite. When you feel empty, you chase. And desire never chases, it responds. This is why the inner work must come first. Before you imagine touch, closeness, or physical connection, you must imagine being wanted, being welcomed, being chosen without effort, not intensely, not obsessively, but calmly. Calm desire is the most powerful form of attraction. Once your body recognizes the feeling of being desired as safe and familiar, your SP's behavior adjusts naturally. Conversations become easier. Connection feels smoother. Attraction reawakens without explanation, because the outside can only echo the inside. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to compete. You do not need to wait for permission to feel wanted. The moment you claim that feeling internally, desire has already begun expressing itself. Feeling desired creates desire, not because you force someone else to feel something, but because you finally allow yourself to be the version of you that is easy to want. Imagination is not fantasy, it is the blueprint of experience. What you consistently accept in imagination becomes the pattern that life follows. Physical expression is never the starting point, it is always the result. Nothing touches the body unless it has first been accepted by the mind. Most people imagine from lack. They picture moments while feeling distance. They visualize scenes while emotionally standing outside of them. And because imagination only creates what feels real, those images dissolve instead of solidifying. Imagination works when it is inhabited, not observed. When you imagine closeness with your SP, you are not rehearsing a future event. You are training your nervous system to recognize intimacy as natural. The body responds to imagination as if it were real. The mind does not argue with images that carry feeling. It accepts them, and what the mind accepts, the world must echo. This is why imagination is the gateway. It is the meeting point between the unseen and the physical. Before anything can show up in behavior, it must first feel normal internally. Before intimacy can express itself through action, it must be familiar in consciousness. Your SP does not respond to your visualizations. They respond to who you become because of them. When you imagine yourself relaxed in their presence, comfortable with closeness, secure in connection, something fundamental shifts. You stop bracing, you stop protecting, you stop waiting, and that openness is felt. Imagination is not about creating scenes, it is about creating states. A state is a feeling you live from. And when you repeatedly imagine from the state of intimacy already existing, your system adjusts. You carry yourself differently. You respond instead of react. You engage without pressure. That change is physical before it is visible. Here is the key most people miss. Imagination must feel ordinary. The moment you imagine intimacy as rare, intense, or dramatic, you signal that it is not normal for you, and whatever is not normal cannot stay. But when you imagine simple closeness, ease, warmth, familiarity, you tell the mind this belongs here, and what belongs stays. When you lie down and imagine your SP near you, not vividly, not forcefully, but gently, you are not asking for something to happen. You are accepting something as already true. You are allowing your body to recognize that experience as safe and expected. That acceptance removes resistance. Resistance is what delays expression, not time, not circumstances. The moment resistance dissolves, movement begins. This is why imagination must be repeated, not to convince reality, but to convince you. The repetition is not effort, it is familiarity. I T is teaching the mind that intimacy is not foreign, not threatening, not uncertain. And once the mind agrees, the body aligns, your SP begins to feel more drawn toward you because you are no longer holding emotional tension. You are no longer sending mixed signals of wanting and fearing closeness. You are settled. Settled energy invites contact. Another essential truth: imagination does not create the event, it creates the pathway. You do not imagine how intimacy will happen. You imagine that it already feels natural between you. The how is handled automatically. Life rearranges behavior, timing, and interaction without your involvement. Trying to control outcomes blocks imagination. Letting imagination change you allows outcomes to flow. When you imagine from fulfillment, you stop monitoring the outer world. You stop checking for signs. You stop measuring progress. And that absence of watching removes pressure from the connection. Pressure suffocates desire. Ease awakens it. Imagination also rewires expectation. If you expect closeness, you interpret interactions differently. Neutral moments stop feeling like rejection. Silence stops feeling threatening. Space stops feeling dangerous. And because you feel safe, your SP feels safe. Safety is the foundation of physical expression. No one moves toward intimacy when they feel watched, evaluated, or needed. They move toward intimacy when they feel free, relaxed, and emotionally welcomed. Your imagination creates that environment before a single physical moment occurs. This is why a short, gentle, imaginal scene done consistently is more powerful than long, intense visualizations filled with effort. You are not impressing the mind, you are soothing it. Imagine the feeling of being wanted, not the act of being wanted. Imagine comfort, not intensity. Imagine certainty, not excitement. Excitement fades, certainty stabilizes, and stability allows physical expression to emerge naturally. When you accept intimacy and imagination as normal, life does not resist bringing it into form, because life only resists what you internally resist. Imagination is the doorway, feeling is the key, acceptance is the moment it opens. And once it opens, expression follows without force. Wanting is the clearest signal that something feels missing. And the moment you occupy the state of wanting, you quietly agree that what you desire is not here yet. That agreement, whether you realize it or not, keeps intimacy at a distance. Not because wanting is bad, but because wanting places you outside the experience you are seeking. Expectation does the opposite. Expectation assumes presence. Expectation assumes availability. Expectation assumes inevitability. And desire always follows expectation. When you want intimacy, you watch for it. You wait for it. You measure time, behavior, and responses. Every interaction becomes a test. Every pause becomes a question. That constant checking introduces tension into the connection, even if nothing is said out loud. Expectation removes that tension. When you expect closeness, you are not impatient, you are calm, you are settled. You are no longer asking, will this happen? You are living from the quiet certainty that it does. This shift is subtle, but it is everything. Wanting says, I don't have. Expecting says, of course. And people respond very differently to those two states. Your SP feels the difference immediately, not mentally, but emotionally. Expectation feels grounded. Wanting feels heavy. Expectation feels open, wanting feels tight. This is why stopping wanting is not about giving up desire. It is about relocating desire from lack into certainty. Expectation is desire without desperation. When you expect intimacy, you stop trying to generate moments. You stop forcing conversations. You stop leaning forward emotionally. You allow space without anxiety. And space, when free of fear, become as inviting rather than threatening. Expectation creates patience without waiting. Waiting implies delay. Expectation implies timing is already aligned. When you expect closeness, you don't rush interactions, you don't push emotional pace, you don't interpret neutral behavior as rejection, you trust the unfolding, and trust is one of the strongest attractors there is. Your SP feels safer with you because you are no longer silently demanding proof. This is a critical point. Expectation removes the need for validation. When you expect intimacy, you do not require reassurance to feel secure. You do not need constant contact to feel connected. You do not need immediate responses to feel wanted. And because you do not need, you become easy to move toward. Needing pulls. Expectation allows. Desire does not respond to pulling. It responds to permission. Expectation gives permission for intimacy to arrive naturally. It tells the emotional field of the connection there is no pressure here, and pressure is the only thing that blocks desire from flowing. Another important truth: expectation changes your inner dialogue. Instead of asking, "Why hasn't this happened yet?" you think, "It's normal that this is unfolding." Instead of thinking, "What if they don't want me?" you think, "They always feel comfortable with me." Those thoughts are not wishful, they are assumptive, and assumption is the engine of experience. Your SP does not need to be convinced to desire you. They need you to stop contradicting desire internally by expecting rejection, delay, or uncertainty. Expectation simplifies everything. You don't imagine scenes to make something happen. You imagine to accompany. Confirm what you already expect. Expectation allows you to imagine without effort, without intensity, without obsession. It becomes a quiet knowing rather than an emotional workout. And because your nervous system is calm, your presence becomes calm. Calm presence invites closeness. This is why expectation often feels boring to the mind, but irresistible to the heart. The mind craves drama. Desire craves ease. When you stop wanting and start expecting, intimacy stops feeling like a goal and starts feeling like a natural outcome. And what feels natural does not need to be chased. Your SP senses this shift in you. They feel less pressure to perform, respond, or decide. They feel free to want you without obligation, free to move closer without fear of being pulled. Freedom awakens desire faster than pursuit ever could. Expectation also dissolves fear of loss. When you expect intimacy, you are not afraid of space. You are not afraid of pauses. You are not afraid of silence. You trust continuity. And continuity is the foundation of physical expression. People lean into what feels steady. By expecting closeness, you stabilize the connection energetically. You stop oscillating between hope and doubt. You hold a consistent inner posture, and consistency is deeply attractive. This does not mean you detach emotionally. It means you anchor emotionally. You anchor yourself in the assumption that intimacy belongs in your experience, that it fits, that it makes sense, that it does not need to be earned. And once you hold that assumption, life organizes itself around it. You do not need to watch for results. You do not need to manage timing. You do not need to stop wanting for recently. You simply allow wanting to soften into knowing, and knowing, quiet, steady, unquestioned knowing, is the state from which desire expresses itself without resistance. Attraction does not originate in another person, it originates in you. The moment you believe someone else is the source of chemistry, desire, or intimacy, you surrender your power and place yourself in a position of waiting. And waiting is the opposite of magnetism. The truth is simpler and far more empowering. You are the source from which attraction flows. Your SP does not decide how strongly they feel about you in isolation. Their experience of you is shaped by the way you experience yourself. When you believe attraction comes from them, you look outward for signals. When you know it comes from you, you settle inward, and that inner settlement is felt Chemistry is not something two people randomly stumble into. Chemistry is an emotional response to presence, and presence is generated internally. When you feel grounded in yourself, comfortable in your own desirability, and at ease with intimacy, you emit a signal that cannot be faked. It is not confidence in performance, it is confidence in being. That state communicates safety, self trust, and openness, all of which are essential ingredients for attraction. This is why trying to get desire never works. Getting implies lack, getting implies dependency, and dependency subtly repels. But when you know you are the source, you no longer need to extract desire from another person. You allow it to arise naturally. Your SP responds not to pursuit, but to availability. Availability is not chasing. Availability is not proving. Availability is emot. Ional openness without need. When you stop assigning your SP the role of giver and yourself the role of receiver, the dynamic shifts. You become equal. You become grounded. And equality is where desire stabilizes. Another key truth: people feel chemistry when they feel free to want. If your energy carries expectation of being filled, chosen, or completed, it creates pressure, even if you never say a word. But when your energy carries wholeness, desire has room to grow. Being the source means you no longer outsource your emotional fulfillment. You enjoy connection without requiring it to validate you. You appreciate attention without depending on it. And that independence does not create distance, it creates intrigue. Intrigue comes from self contained energy. When you know attraction flows from you, you stop monitoring your SP's reactions. You stop interpreting their moods. You stop assigning meaning to every action. And because you are no longer hyper focused on outcome, you become fully present in interaction. Presence is felt as intimacy. Your SP feels more relaxed around you because you are not silently asking for something. You are simply there. And being there without agenda is one of the strongest attractors there is. Being the source also means you take responsibility for your inner atmosphere. If you feel anxious, you don't blame circumstances. If you feel insecure, you don't blame their behavior. You adjust your state. You return to the feeling of self sufficiency, desirability, and calm certainty. And that adjustment changes everything. Attraction does not respond to perfection. Attraction responds to authentic stability. When you feel steady in yours, Elf, you don't overreact. You don't rush. You don't pull away out of fear. You move at a natural pace. A natural pace is where chemistry deepens. This is why attraction often intensifies when you stop trying. It's not coincidence, it's causation. The moment you stop attempting to generate chemistry, you return to being its source. Being the source does not mean you close yourself off. It means you stop leaning outward for completion. You stand rooted. And from that rootedness, connection becomes rich rather than needy. Your SP senses this and feels invited rather than demanded. Another powerful shift happens when you know you are the source. You stop fearing loss. If attraction flows from you, then it cannot disappear. It may fluctuate, evolve, deepen, but it does not vanish. That knowing creates emotional security, and emotional security is what allows physical expression to feel safe and natural. People do not move toward intimacy when they feel they are responsible for someone else's emotional balance. They move toward intimacy when they feel chosen, not required. Being the source removes emotional burden from the connection. You are no longer asking your SP to complete a story. You are inviting them into a story already unfolding, and invitations are far more appealing than requests. When you hold this identity, your energy becomes consistent. You don't oscillate between confidence and doubt. You don't switch between closeness and withdrawal. You are stable, and stability is deeply attractive. This is the final alignment. You are not trying to be magnetic. You are magnetic, not because of technique, not because of effort, but because you know where attraction originates. It originates in you.